Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Facebook and YouTube live event. I'm Huma, and I'm one of the course tutors along with Shireen and Melissa on the Teaching English free courses for teachers. You'll find links for these courses in the comments soon. Today, we are excited to be joined by two experienced guests from the field of refugee education, Suzan Luswata and Ben Aguiman. And together with you, the live audience, Susan and Ben, we'll be exploring how we can support refugee teachers and learners. And we'll also be discussing your questions throughout the session. So if you're here already, please tell us who and where you are and add your questions and comments in the chat. So let's get started. Hello, Susan and Ben.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Susan? And how are you, Ben?
Wow, fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's fantastic to have you here with us today, and welcome to today's event. So let's get started by asking you, could you tell us a bit about where you're based and what you do? Yes, Susan,
Thank
would you
you.
like to go first?
Yes, thank you. As I've been introduced, my name is Suzan Luswata, and I'm based in Uganda. And Uganda is a small country in Eastern Africa. Um, I am a trainer, and I've been working with British Council for the last 15 to 20 years training teachers in various fields. But I'm also now involved with the British Council program of Language for Resilience, working with refugee children in partnership with Window International. I got involved with training refugees from 2021, and we train teachers in classroom practices and in how to handle classrooms with multilingual learners.
Thank you so much, Susan. That seems to be a lot of experience which is going to come in handy for our conversation today. Ben, what about
Mm,
you?
mm.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Anguma. I work with the Window International in Uganda, and Window International Uganda works with the refugees, especially in education. So, as Ben Anguma, I work in a Germany refugee settlement, and
Mm,
I've worked with the Window for now 8 years in refugee education,
wow.
and I started in MVP, where the project Strengthen Learner Retention, supported by British Council, started, and they have grown into it, seeing how the refugee learners are supported to learn, and also the refugee teachers are supported to deliver their lessons effectively. Thank you so much to be part of this engagement today.
Thank you so much, Ben. A little bit about me now. Well, I'm based in the UAE. It's midday here, and it's so hot that perhaps you can bake a pizza on the sidewalk without an oven. So it's that hot here. I work with both teachers and students at and for the British Council. So that's about me in short. Let's see who's joined us here today. We got people joining us from all over the world. We got teachers from Mauritius, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Morocco, Ghana, um, Burkina Faso. And of course, I've got my co tutor Shirin joining us from Turkey as well in the chat. So, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're going to be talking about supporting refugee teachers and learners. So, Ben and Suzanne, before we dive into the discussion, a couple of reminders for us. Please remember to jump in, like I said before, to answer any question that resonates with you. You also have a choice to pass anything, or maybe not. Well, we'll see how that goes, how the conversation goes, but no pressure at all. And please don't mind me looking away because I need to check the audience comments and questions. So, Ben and Susan, I was reading about you and your work. Stalking might sound a bit intense, so I'm going to call it research. And I learned about the inspiring work that you've been doing with refugees and the host communities. So, what drew you to work in refugee education? Ben, would you like to go first?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm a teacher by profession, and as I said, I've worked for long with refugees in terms of education. And what drew me to work in the refugee education is, first of all, my parents were refugees in
Mm.
1979, the liberation war in Uganda. So I was not born by that time, but my parents took refuge in South Sudan, and they kept telling me about the refugee situation, and I kept praying one day I should be able to contribute towards the refugee education. And all along, this has been my one single reason that makes me to work in refugee education. When I was teaching, actually, as I was practicing to become a teacher, I did my teaching practice or school practice in a refugee school. So I learned a lot from that time, and I really committed to work with the refugees. So it is the reason why I am, working in the refugee education. Thank you.
So Ben, that sounds like that your personal experience has helped you enrich your classrooms too, and we'll come back to that, pretty soon. What about you, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you, Hamama. I came involved with refugees because as a British Council trainer, and we had been training in what we call core skills. And
Mm.
British Council then went into partnership with Window International, and a
Oh yeah.
gentleman called Rod Hicks had written a handbook for teachers of refugees. So, as facilitators, we were required to turn this handbook into training materials. So we turned it into training materials, and we rolled out training in all the seven camps in Uganda. That's when I started working with refugees. And when I went for the first training, I was hooked because I saw the plight of refugees and the need and the gaps in educating them. So I've stayed there until now, and I hope I will continue to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. That sounds very inspiring. So Ben and Susan, going back to your own personal experience, of starting out, with refugees. So what were your first impressions or your feelings when you started working with refugee teachers and learners? And how do you think that compares to working with teachers and learners in a non-refugee context? What are the similarities or differences?
Mm. I will ask Ben to go first on that one.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. I can proudly say that yes, one similarity in terms of educating both refugees and the host community is the willingness to learn.
Mm,
The refugees are eager to learn, they are very much willing to learn, they are ready to learn. But now, when they set their journey to education in another country, there are some differences that arise. One thing is the issue of the language difference. You find the language the refugee learner is used to is completely different from the language of instruction of the host country. And now when they come, they cannot understand. They at times get frustrated. They now use negative coping mechanisms because they cannot understand what the teacher is teaching. So even the learners of the host community do not know the common language used by this refugee learner. So it places them at an awkward position at times. And that comes with now the issue of frustration. And if not attended to, can easily result into these children dropping out of school because they are not learning anything in the school. That's one thing which is very important for us to note, and we have ever noticed it. I'm happy that British Council has always come in a way to address this gap. The issue of the curriculum they were they were using in their home country is totally different from the curriculum
mm,
of the country they are now seeking the asylum or they are now living as a refugee. So aligning the curriculum of the country of origin and the country where they are settled presents them a great challenge. And that's something which teachers, the refugee teachers, always look at to address for these refugee learners to start concentrating in education. So alignment of the curriculum is something which is critical. Then also the mindset where this person has completely lost everything as they were in transit from the country of origin to now this new country where they are settled, places them with that mindset of, I think the world is over for me, I cannot do anything anymore. And
Mm.
it limits their support to education. But
Uh,
with the with kind of support from the different partners, including British Council, this always keeps changing from time to time. I'm happy that the narrative keeps changing with the kind of support we receive from partners like British Council. Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Actually, I'd like to come in here. Ben, your response has brought out some very valid points that might be useful for our community members too, because many of our community members have mentioned that they struggle with language barriers in their classroom because they've got refugee learners or learners who are displaced, along with other learners who are not refugees. And therefore, this creates a language barrier because the teachers don't share languages with these learners. So I'd request both of you to jump in here. So what would you advise? How can teachers bridge this gap when there are language barriers?
I think the major problem in the camps and education there is the language. And there are many strategies that a teacher can look at. I'm sure we shall discuss them more in detail. But I think the first is empathy, to understand that these learners were once free and were living in a country where they were free, and now they are living in a camp and they are actually locked in. So you've got
Mm,
to have empathy. When you have empathy, you develop a relationship with them. And when you develop a relationship with them, then you're going to start learning. They're going to start learning. They're going to feel comfortable to be where they are. In Uganda, in the camps, there are different levels of language because some camps have got the language, what we call the familiar language. For example, in the camp that I've just been from, everybody speaks Swahili as the familiar language. But then there are many other individual languages. Now, then you have the new refugees that come in that do not speak Swahili, do
oh
not
dear.
speak English. You see,
Mm,
so it is really very complex. So the teacher plays a key role in gelling everyone together. Probably we recommend you start learning a few words from each language to greet them, to welcome them. How do you welcome them when they get to the new school? And
mm.
learn a few words. Learn a few words to make them comfortable. Thank
Thank you, Suzanne. And Ben, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah,
How
I think.
can we how can we address language barriers?
All right, thank you. I think one of them is already what Susan has talked about, and of course, there are learners, for example, who come and they are very quick in actually even learning
you.
a new language. And as a teacher, one thing which we need to take note of is that identify such quick learners of the new languages
Mm.
and then group them with these
Oh
other
yeah.
new ones so that
Mm,
they begin
mm,
also building the capacity of these very new ones to learn the new language. Also,
mm,
secondly, we have resource persons, by the way, among the refugee community in Uganda. We call them as teaching assistants. These are refugees who know the language of the country of origin, and when they come, we also employ them, and then they support language transition for the new refugee learners.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay, those are some great strategies, Ben, and those remind me of our course. This is for the audience. We are running a course called Teaching English to Refugees and Displaced Learners. And one of the modules of our course talks about peer support, which you mentioned, Ben. I think it's useful to get learners who might understand each other a little bit, or who might speak, common language, or someone who's quick at picking up a new language, like you said, can come together and they can support each other, perhaps help each other, lift each other up. um, from my experience, actually, I have worked in situations both with refugee teachers and learners and others where there are lots and lots of language barriers, because I don't, share languages with teachers and learners I work with. So some of the things that have worked for me, of course, are, using realia, everyday objects, using visual aids and gestures, and also bilingual materials. So if teachers have access to the internet, then I think we also have AI today, then creating bilingual material becomes quite easy. Now, talking about materials, Ben, you also mentioned about curriculum. Oh dear, I'm so sorry. We've lost Susan for a second here. We all know how technology can be, so we're just hoping, fingers crossed, that Susan is going to make her way into the live event soon. So, Ben, going back to your point about curriculum, well, that's another question that has come up from our community members, because many of our community members have said that the mainstream course books that they use don't seem to be addressing the needs of the refugee learners in their class. So, what advice do you have for adapting or creating materials?
All right, thank you. In terms of adapting or creating materials for the refugee learners, of course, when they come, obviously they use the curriculum of the country where they are settled. They don't use the curriculum of their country of origin. So
Yeah.
what it means is that yes, the curriculum, when the materials are being developed, let the materials be developed in consultation with the teaching assistants, but also even engaging these other learners who have already adopted or who have learned the local language or the language of instruction, so that when they are developing the materials, for example, we are talking about a tree. The name of a tree, for example, in South Sudan, in Dinga, is different from how we know it here. So these learners or the teaching assistants who are refugees themselves should be part of the development of these materials. It helps for them to give the name of, for example, the tree or a mountain or whatever it is
Mm.
in the language they understand. And once that is embedded in your material, it makes this learner to actually link the language unknown to him to this material, and then also the language they know. So to me, one of the things teachers should do is to collaboratively develop materials with the refugee learners themselves involved. Thank you.
Wow, that's a wonderful point, Ben. I really love this point that you made. I think that's a very good idea, and also, drums home or reiterates one of the important teaching strategies, that is using our learners as a resource. And our course, the Refugees course, also suggests that we use learners as resource and get their support for creating or adapting material. And to add to what you have said, I think it would also be useful to bring in stories of migration and displacement from our learners into our
Mhm,
classroom. And also,
mhm,
we must give them agency to express themselves. Maybe get learners to keep journals, which can be multimodal. They can add pictures, drawings, and use their own languages in those journals,
mhm,
to process, their real life experiences. And the teacher, can bring in stories of migration and current events and their own real life experiences. And like you've said, I think collaborating with learners and getting them to own this process, I think, can be motivating for them and for the teachers. Oh, Susan's back. Thank you so much, Susan. I mean, we're so glad that you're back.
Yes. Sorry.
All right,
Okay,
so
thank you.
Susan,
I'm sorry about that.
No, not at all, Susan. We know how technology, can be, it's unpredictable, and we've all
Yeah.
experienced this sometime or the other. Susan, we've been talking about adapting or creating materials for refugee learners. Have you got any ideas for us, Susan?
Yes. Materials, most teachers tell you that the materials that are available sometimes are not really compatible with their
Mm.
group. And
Oh, yeah.
a teacher needs to really be very creative in creating materials. You can use what you have, but then you contextualize it to your
Yes,
classroom.
indeed.
For example, I've seen teachers that we have trained coming up with charts, with learners' charts. For example, in P1, P2, P3, and they will have a chart with a ball, dog, bicycle
Mm.
in English with a picture. But then they would use the familiar language of the learners. So when they say boy, they'll say boy in English. Then they'll write it in Swahili, they'll write it in any other language that appears in their class. In that way, every child is included in reading that chart. And they will be at least able to identify the picture with their language and then with the English word. So that is one way. Then you can even use the learners themselves to be resource materials inside the classroom. How you recently, when I was there, I saw a young lady who was teaching learners dry
Mm.
activities you do in the dry season and activities you do in the rainy season. And so when he said digging, in the rainy season we dig, and she said, "Can someone come and demonstrate digging?" So the children
Oh,
came forward
wow.
and demonstrated. Then she said, "How can we demonstrate planting?" And
Mm.
learners came out and demonstrated planting. And I didn't know there were about 4 different ways children can plant. I mean, people plant things. So children can become resources themselves by asking them to act out things. And of course, use of Relia.
Oh, yeah. We
Real,
were talking about that.
yes, real
Yeah.
objects that I'm talking about a ball. This is a
Mm.
ball. And what do we use the ball for? And then again, they would show by playing with the ball and acting out with that ball. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, those are
So
some great ideas. I mean,
it's
miming and acting out. Susan, sorry, I
yes,
interrupted you there. I think that also reminds me because I'm sure some of the teachers, come from a similar context that I work in. So, one of the other ways is even if teachers don't share languages with their learners, they can still get their learners to brainstorm ideas in their own languages, because the teacher has to trust the learners and their proficiency in their home languages, and help them bridge that gap between English and their home languages. So this is, would be my suggestion to teachers who don't share languages with their learners, because I work in a similar context. You can get your learners to brainstorm ideas, compare language features in different languages, and like Susan and Ben have suggested, maybe use realia or mime and get them to act out, so there are different ways. Okay, I think we should head to the chat box now, because we got some lovely comments and questions here. There is a comment here from a community member who says, when a teacher truly understands and shares in the experiences of a refugee learner, they are able to communicate in ways that connect deeply, making it easier for the learner to engage and learn. I think that's a very lovely comment there from our community member. And I think that goes back to what Ben was talking about earlier, with respect to his own personal experience and how that, drew him into refugee education. We got more people who've joined us from Gabon, from Sudan, from Spain, and from other parts of the world. There's a question here, very nice question here for all of us. And the question is, how can we establish equity among refugee learners? Oh,
mm.
that's a
How
good
can we
one there.
establish equity? Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. I think it is our teaching, the pedagogies we use,
Mm.
and the practices inside the classroom. It's very important for you to be interactive, to be inclusive, and to be learner centered. When you are teaching them, that is when you're going to get equity. Groups are very important here. Or maybe let me not start with groups. Let me start from the lesson preparation, because that's the key to any lesson you're going to teach. Lesson preparation. When you're preparing your lesson, whichever activity you set, make sure that it includes everyone. Activities that will ensure that every learner is given the same opportunity or equal opportunity to take part in that activity. And then dividing the learners into groups is important, because each group, especially if you put them in groups of their language that they understand, and in each group you have several learners who can support others in the language they speak. So to help translate, if you don't have a translator, because some schools don't have translators, and therefore that way every learner has got peer-to-peer support within their group, and then therefore you know that they are learning, and sharing whatever you have equally. That if you're making learning resources, make sure they're enough. Don't say,
Mm,
oh, I don't have enough, so you give some groups some and others less. So it's important to make sure that the learning materials are equal for everyone. Then, therefore, that's why groups are good, because then you know that even if you have little, it will go far when you use groups and they're sharing, and therefore you will be putting the learners at equal opportunity. Allowing everyone to answer questions, answering questions and participating in school in class activities is also making the learners, bringing equality in your classroom. How do you do it? Through planning. Planning your lesson. That's why planning your lesson is very key. Thank you.
absolutely, Susan. I mean, that again reminds me of our refugees course that talks about differentiated instruction, because the question was about equity. So it's important for teachers to differentiate the learning material so everybody has a chance to succeed, in the classroom. They might all need different level of support, but at the end, you want everybody to succeed and have that sense of progress. So the course talks about differentiated instruction, like you said, peer support, pair work, works very well, with when we work with not just refugee learners but all, kinds of learners and all classrooms around the world. So yes, differentiation and pair work can work well. And going back to your earlier point about using learners as a resource, get learners to contribute to lesson creation, to materials creation, which means that you have more authentic voices, that are being heard, when you deliver lessons in the classroom. Um, so there are some more comments here. Oh, yeah. So one of our community members, who's also a very active member in our community, agrees with you and says, be an inclusive teacher and understand them as human beings. This is my teaching tip. So that's what the community member here has to tell us. And we totally agree with you. That's a lovely comment there. Thank you so much. There's another question here. And the question is, how can we teach students who are parents? I mean, those who've lost their parents are obliged to be parents and children at the same time. So, how can we help these learners? So, perhaps maybe adult
Um,
learners. The question is about working with adult refugee learners.
mm,
All right. Thank you. I think.
um, I don't.
Yes, Ben.
All right.
Oh,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Yes, we have situations where we have the adult refugee learners, where
Mm,
they have, of course, apart from being a learner, they also have parental
mm,
responsibilities that they take care of. It is all about
mm,
understanding their situation and then aligning programs that fit their situation. For example, you find that they may be irregular because of the additional responsibilities they have. What normally we encourage is that one, when this person misses maybe a lesson for a reason or for maybe additional responsibility at home, you need to have a catch-up plan, a schedule that can enable this person catch up with the lost instruction
Mm.
time. Make it favorable for them. Just have a schedule that works for both you and this adult learner. Thank you.
Susan, I think
Yes.
you wanted to say something about this.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes. Just to add on to what Ben says, because these refugees come in, and for example, in Uganda, the language of instruction is English, and they come in and
Mm,
their English. It's not that they don't understand material, but it's because their understanding of English is low. So they are put in a class. You find a 15-year-old put in a class with 8-year-olds.
mm.
Now that's how do you accelerate learning for this person? You need to monitor especially English. You need to monitor them and ensure that you support them to move on to the right class. For example, in the camps now in Uganda, we have the English catch-up classes after school. These have been very
Oh, yes.
supportive to learners to be accelerated into the next class. And as Ben said, they have remedial lessons. That also helps because if they stay with in the wrong class, that again brings problems, and they will drop out of school because they're not put with their learners of their age groups. And they do understand, they will understand science, they will understand SST, but they will not be able to speak the language. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yes, actually, I read about the remedial classes that you've been running, in your camps to help learners catch up, and to be able to
Yeah.
succeed and achieve their learning goals. So I was reading about it the other day. Thank you so much for that point. So, Ben and Susan, I mean, we've almost come to the end of our conversation, but before we go away, there's a question for both of you, and there is no room here to say pass. Well, so the question is, what would be your top three tips for teachers who are new to working with refugee learners? Who'd like to go first?
Uh,
I can go.
Yes,
okay,
sure.
I'll
Yes,
go
yes,
first
Ben. Yes.
because
Thank you.
I am very passionate about improving learning and about it's classroom practice.
All right.
Make your classroom practice inclusive, interactive, and learner-centered. And also make friends with the refugees. When you do make friends with them, even the discipline issues will be dealt with because they're your friends and they will listen to you. And those are my two top ones. Yes, I'll give it to Ben.
Yes, Ben. What about you? Your top
All right.
three tips.
Obviously, one is the issue of empathy. You need to be empathetic to understand the feelings and also the experiences of the refugee, so that they are able to you are able to help them better. Learning the refugee language, as we earlier on indicated, makes you to connect directly with this the refugee learner and even their parents. And then finally, ensuring that you get involved in activities that may be outside the classroom but in the community, so that you are able to relate very well with their parents, which is very, very important to drum the support of the parents for these refugee learners. Those are my top three tips. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan and Ben. I'm going to use this opportunity to give my top three tips. And from my experience,
Yes.
I would say I agree with both of you. I mean, couldn't agree more. I think it's important to be empathetic, as Ben mentioned, and have patience. Because things might not go as planned. And I think it's also important to be flexible because I remember one of the refugee teachers I worked with once told me that when you work with refugee learners, it's like you're writing a course book as you go along, and sometimes you don't even know what's going to be on the next page. So I think you have to adapt, be responsive, and therefore be flexible. So my top three tips would be patient, be empathetic, and be flexible. And if you're watching us, I mean, please add your, this is for the live audience, please add your top three tips to the comments. So that brings us almost to the end of today's discussion. Thank you so much, Ben and Susan. It was fantastic to have you here with us today. This was such a meaningful conversation. And I'm sure that our community members and our YouTube audience have gained lots of actionable ideas from you. Before we go away, there's another announcement, some housekeeping that we need to do. We've been running 9 courses since early April. 3 of our main courses, the enrollment for 3 of our main courses ends tomorrow, the 17th of June, and they are motivating learners, motivating activities for primary and classroom research. So this is for the live audience. If you haven't registered for these and if you're interested, well, you'll find the link in the comments. Thank you. A big thank you to everyone for your participation and your comments. Let's keep this conversation going in the comments. Thank you, Ben and Suzanne, for your time and for volunteering to be a part of this discussion today. Thanks, Philippa and Chris, for working your magic in the background, and Shireen for supporting us with planning the content. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.
coming today. You take care and bye bye.
A Teaching English page on Facebook, tap About. Go down the page until you see Groups. Then tap See All. Tap the name of a group to learn more about it. You must ask to join private groups before you can access them. Read carefully and provide any requested information. Read the group rules. Confirm that you agree to them. Then tap Submit. Popular posts from your groups will appear in your newsfeed. Tap on the name of a group to go there. Or access all your groups by tapping on your profile. Groups. Then choose which group to explore.